Coming up today on the Nick Craig Show, the impact of artificial intelligence. We'll talk about utility bills, the impacts as it relates to your daily life, plus its implementation in the classroom. We'll be joined by Descovich of Moms for Liberty to discuss that, all that and more coming up. And a good Friday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. Don't forget that you can take the show with you 24/7 on demand by checking out the Nick Craig Show in your favorite podcast app. You can also listen online by visiting the website nickcraig.com. Our show this morning, as always, is brought to you by Melissa Gott and the amazing team over at the Law Group here in Wilmington. Visit them online, lawgroupnc.com, or give them a call, 910-251-6088. We'll hear more from Melissa Gott and her team coming up here in just a couple of minutes. I wanted to talk about AI on the episode today. There's a lot of different elements and impacts of artificial intelligence. So we're going to break down a couple of different sectors and facets of AI because there's some interesting things going on there. And as we progress through the program, we'll be joined by Tina Descovich. She is the co-founder and CEO of Moms for Liberty. And as they've got some new pledges and pushes out about concerns and questions about AI use in the classrooms across the United States. She'll join us coming up here in just a little bit. But I wanted to start off with the impact on most individuals' lives as it relates to utility bills, because this is where, at least in the immediate short term, people are seeing the impact of artificial intelligence. These data centers are being built across the United States. You've got municipalities and states that are, in some cases, incentivizing these projects, which, by definition is not a free market thing. But nevertheless, we'll put that aside. You've got these things popping up and being built all over the continental United States right now, as pretty much any company that is in the tech sector is racing to get these plants built. They need the computing power. They need the ability to continue to increase the power within their various AI models or their various pieces of AI infrastructure. And the way to do that is you need more compute. And so the solution to that is to build data centers, to build infrastructure, to build capacity to make that possible. Now, that's caused a couple of problems. Utility prices, yes, we'll talk about that coming up here in just a couple of minutes. But for regular consumers, it's raising the price of other pieces of technology. And so one of the things that's kind of interesting to watch as this continues to play out is that your phone, for example, has memory. Your computer, your laptop or your desktop computer has memory. Your car, if it's got any sort of screen associated with it or attached to it with your radio and navigation, there is some level of RAM or memory that exists in pretty much any device nowadays that has any sort of basic logic. And these major AI providers, these major AI companies, or really I should say tech companies, are taking and getting as much of this RAM, as much of this memory as possible. They need it for their high influence compute servers that they are rolling out in data centers across the country. So for those that are like computer enthusiasts, PC enthusiasts, maybe you're a video gamer or something like that, you have seen the price of RAM, like in some cases, quadruple in the span of like less than a year, or maybe just around a year. And so that has an effect on pretty much every piece of technology that you're buying, whether there's any quote unquote AI involved in that or not. You are seeing a major increase in that cost just due to the fact that the memory, the RAM that pretty much every device has now, those providers, for example, Apple or Samsung, whoever it might be, they are competing with the likes of NVIDIA and Amazon and all of these other companies, Microsoft, that are building out these major server farms across the country. There is essentially like a cash grab going on for memory. So that's one element in one aspect. You're seeing those rising prices of pretty much any consumer electronic and things that you wouldn't assume, like cars and things like that, because there's essentially a memory shortage that has been created, and these AI companies or these tech companies are willing to pay pretty much any price so that they can continue to build out capacity. So that's one element of it. Now, I'll admit that the impact might be relatively minuscule, right, in terms of if you're buying a phone or a car or a laptop or something like that. But if you're just going out to the hardware market and you're maybe building a new computer and you're looking to put memory in it, RAM in it, you are looking at prices that are 2, 3, maybe even 4 times what they were just 12 or 14 months ago. So in that case, you're seeing a major impact. Now we need to talk about the electrical grid. This is not a new conversation. It's not a new discussion. It is as it relates to artificial intelligence and data centers. But for those that have followed some of the discussion and some of the conversation around what is called base load power, which is, the minimum amount of power that a major electrical provider has to produce for base load, for just regular everyday use. That does not include peaks and valleys and demands. You've got what is called base load power. And popular sources of base load power are things like coal, natural gas, and nuclear. These are things that can run at a specified amount of generation consistently, right? You can consistently burn a certain amount of natural gas and you know how much power you're going to generate. You can burn a certain amount of coal, same thing, nuclear. You can spin a reactor up or down and you can get to a very specific, predictable amount of power output. That is why it is called baseload power. Things that are not baseload power include solar and wind. Just inherently, they can't be baseload, right? Depending on outdoor conditions, sun, wind, no wind, it is very hard to determine what the baseload generation is. Inherently, those forms of and sources of energy are inconsistent, just literally based on the nature. If it's rainy, if it's cloudy, your solar panels are going to generate far less electricity than they would if it was an August summer day with not a cloud in the sky. Same thing that you see with wind, whether we're talking about onshore or offshore wind projects. Similar concept. So couple of different kind of competing factors going on here. You've got a environmental push from those on the political left away from those traditional baseload sources, nat gas, coal, and nuclear, and you're seeing this push towards quote unquote green energy, solar and wind. We have talked about this plenty of times over the years. That is not a good idea, at least at this point in time. Maybe 15, 20 years down the road when battery technology continues to adapt and continues to become more efficient and more practical, it might be. But I can tell you and say to you very confidently here that that is not the case right now. Will it get there? Probably. Technology adapts. Technology innovates. Technology improves what it does. And so we're not there yet, and you've got this major push towards inherently unreliable forms of energy, solar and wind. And this is, of course, this was a huge push under the previous administration coming straight out of Washington, D.C., the Green New Deal being pushed by progressives, not only just in Washington, D.C., but advocates of that all across the country, pushing for this inherently unaffordable, unreliable form of energy. And so that puts a strain, that puts a tax on the electrical grid. When you've got events that take place, very high heat, very low cold temperatures, when you've inherently got these unreliable forms of energy providing electricity to the grid, that puts you in a position where you could be looking at things like rolling black and brownouts, where you've got power companies that in the only way that they can protect their grid is to cut certain people off, essentially shed load off of the grid. And the only way to do that is to turn off your lights, turn off your air conditioner, turn off your appliances. And that is exactly what we see. So that is a problem. As I said, that discussion is not new. However, it is becoming I would argue, a much more exacerbated issue now that we're looking at the rise and the demand that is required for these major data centers that are popping up all across the country. So you've already got, in most cases, a relatively taxed power grid because so many of these utility companies, in some cases, have been forced by state regulators or federal regulators to adopt these inherently very unreliable forms of energy. And then you've got Amazon or Microsoft or Google or Apple or whoever that comes strolling into the neighborhood and says, hey, we want to build this massive data center and we're going to put all of that load on the grid. And so you can pretty quickly begin to understand how that begins to create a major problem, not only for the AI companies and for the technology companies, but for you and me, right? Because we're not building data centers in our basements, but that demand, that impact is being felt, and it's a very real impact on the electrical grid. That has caused some problems, or I guess what I should say is these data centers that are being built by these major tech companies are adding an incredible amount of demand to the grid. That is causing these grid operators, in some cases, to have to retool old plants. You've got old coal-fired plants that are now being retrofitted for natural gas, which is something that has been going on for quite some time. I remember reading a story, it's probably about a year ago, maybe a little bit less, that Microsoft they're paying out of their own pocket to bring back online one of the reactors at 3 Mile Island up in Pennsylvania because they're building some new major data centers and they are looking at the electrical demand and the electrical generation. So they are literally commissioning to get I think it's reactor number 3 at 3 Mile Island, put back into commission, put back into service. And with all of that, you and I are bearing the brunt of a lot of that cost. I found an interesting article over at Fox News. It was published a couple of weeks ago, and I'm just going to read a little bit of it. It says, artificial intelligence and data centers have been blamed for rising electricity costs across the U.S. In December of 2025, American consumers paid 42% more to power their homes than 10 years ago. 42% more than 10 years ago. And let me remind you, and makes everybody feel a little bit old, 10 years ago wasn't 2002. 10 years ago was 2016, right? It really wasn't that long ago in the grand scheme of things. And so you're seeing these costs, unfortunately, be passed on to the U.S. consumer. I published an article back in late January over at CarolinaJournal.com about this, and there was some discussion about that. And I found this article from Bloomberg that showed that wholesale electricity prices in many parts of the United States have surged dramatically now just since 2020. So the Bloomberg study was only going back 5 or 6 years. With Bloomberg's analysis noting in some areas near large AI data center hubs, they have seen costs rise as much as 267%. 267%. Compared to where it was just 5 years ago. The analysis goes on to state, the report tracked electricity prices at thousands of grid, quote, nodes and found that price increases are much more concentrated near regions with heavy data center activity, suggesting a very strong connection or parallel between rapid data center growth and local electricity cost pressures. More than 70% of the locations with rising prices are within roughly 50 miles of major data centers. And so there is, in fact, some sort of correlation there. Is the increase in data centers predominantly to build large language AI models with massive amounts of compute power? Is it the only reason that electricity prices are skyrocketing? It is in fact not. There are, of course, plenty of other external factors, plenty of other things that cause electricity to go up or go down in price. But I can say pretty confidently it's playing a major impact. And the reason I put that clarifier in there is because you'll talk to individuals and they say, well, AI is not the only thing. These data centers aren't the only thing causing prices to go up. And yes, sure, that's absolutely the case. But it doesn't matter what sort of analysis you look at. There is a very clear correlation between the increase in these data centers being built in communities all across the United States and what it is costing American families to turn on the lights in their home, to run their heat, to run their air conditioning, to power their appliances. And, all of this kind of rolls back to the larger discussion over the squeeze and the pinch that middle-class Americans have felt now for going on 5, 6, 7 years, right? When your power bill is slowly trickling up $10, $15 a month, while, you're not going to probably be put into financial ruin by your power bill going up $15 a month, you kind of look at that on a scale over a 4 or 5 year period of time. You blink real quick and you've spent, thousands of dollars more over that span of time on your electricity bill. And so you kind of play that out over time, and it is a pretty major impact. I mean, I see posts on in a couple of course, North Carolina and local Facebook groups, and I see posts pretty regularly of people saying, what the heck is going on here? I just got my bill from Duke, and yeah, it was a little cold, but my power bill went from, $180 a month to almost $300 in the span of just 1 month, December to January or January to February, whatever span of time. And the problem, unfortunately, with the cost of electricity is it doesn't go down very frequently, right? It's just like everything else. That's always the issue with, inflation. When a price at a store goes up by $1 or $2 outside of, things like food and things like that, prices very rarely go down. When a company hikes up the price on something, even just a couple of bucks, tends to stick there, tends to stay there. And there's very little that causes that to go back down. And so you've got these various concerns that are starting to play out with these major data centers, because consumers are saying, now, hey, hold on a second here. You've got this data center. In the case here, Amazon is set to build a $10 billion cloud computing and AI innovation campus in Richmond County in North Carolina. They announced that back in June of last year. And so you've got local residents that are saying, hey, this is great, right? We've got jobs, high-paying jobs, company like Amazon. They know what they're doing. Their AWS, Amazon Web Services, is one of the most prominent internet companies in the world. So job growth, economic growth, all of that stuff is great. The question is, why are the consumers bearing the brunt of that electricity? And I think that is where you're starting to see some of the frustration and some of the concern across the country. There is no question about it. A good economic benefit, a good economic impact when Google, Amazon, Microsoft, any company announces they are building any size facility in and around where you live. There is going to be growth, and it is a good thing. But there are also some major negatives. And I would argue that regular, everyday home electrical consumers and small and medium-sized businesses that are bearing the brunt of these costs, that is a problem. That is something that has to be dealt with. And so just back a couple of months ago, we saw Democrat Governor Josh Stein here in North Carolina sign on to a letter with some other governors, bipartisan governors from states like Virginia, Tennessee, Ohio, all of them signing on to a letter to a group called the PJM Intraconnect, which is a major electrical interconnect grid. And the governor said, quote, I am committed to keeping electricity costs as low as possible for families. This means making sure data centers pay their fair share for electricity that they require to be generated. I applaud the United States Department of Energy for their initiatives and remain committed to making life as affordable as possible for North Carolinians. And so you've got this, these governors now, and you've got federal officials up in the Trump administration. They can see the concern. They can see what's going on here. And there is some concern about it, and I would argue rightfully so. There is a major problem when regular, everyday, middle-class Americans see their power bills go up 30 or 40% in the span of just a couple of years so that Amazon or Google can build an AI data center. That is a major, major problem, and it is absolutely something that needs to be discussed. What is the solution to it? I'm a little hesitant when I hear people say, the data centers need to pay their, quote, fair share. I don't know what that means. I think I inherently know what it means, but I'm not clear. I don't like the fair share argument. Right? Where do you hear that? Oh, wealthy people, the 1%, businesses need to pay their fair share. You've heard that now for 30 years. And so I've got a little bit of skepticism, maybe accurate to say a little bit of anxiety where as it relates to individuals, especially Democrats, saying it's time for people to pay their fair share. And so there is an issue here. The question is, how do we deal with it? Now, of course, there is the privacy concern as it relates to artificial intelligence, because you are seeing AI now be used in so many different facets of day-to-day life. And there is a major question as to what that looks like as it relates to privacy. The acronym AI is probably one of the hottest acronyms in the English dictionary over the last couple of years. Practically any product or service that you see nowadays available offers some sort of artificial intelligence add-on. And while it has helped many people deal with a lot of issues and can help businesses streamline and to make things more efficient, there are some serious concerns as it relates to AI making its way into the classroom. To walk us through some of that today, it's my pleasure to welcome Tina Descovich, the CEO and co-founder of Moms for Liberty. Tina, thanks for spending some time with us today. Walk us through some of the concerns that you're seeing as it relates to AI in the classroom.
It's my pleasure to be here with you. It's so important that we educate parents and community members, grandparents on what's happening with AI in the classroom right now. Obviously, AI is a powerful tool, and we support using it in appropriate manners to help our kids advance and help America advance. The president has led his own initiative on making sure we are first in the world in AI education, and we support that. However, it's like a drug. It can be used for good to help improve education, but if it's not checked and if it doesn't have guardrails and there aren't guardrails put in place, it can literally destroy children. And so we have parents coming to us now that 10 and 11 years old, with their children are 10 or 11 years old, where they've are accessing AI companions on school laptops during school hours, and these companions are sexualizing them. These companions are counseling them, are being their therapy, and it's really, really dangerous.
Well, and Tina, using technology in the classroom is a good thing, I would argue. I mean, so much of the workforce is transitioned and being and having these skills available for a later on employment is a good thing. But as you're highlighting and noting right there is a period of time where this crosses from useful and effective into the workplace going forward and not.
Yeah, so teachers are using it pretty much unilaterally, I would say, from everything we've seen right now to help with lesson plans, to help organize their classroom and, streamline some of their systems and processes, which is not a problem. But obviously, that also needs to be kept in check. My own son said he has a class that every day they go in the classroom and he puts up on the projector the lesson plan, and they can actually see above it where he's asked AI to write the lesson plan for the day. And he's like, Mom, it's so discouraging because sometimes you could just tell it doesn't even make sense. And so even kids know when adults are being lazy with AI, and we don't want our students to be lazy with AI either. And so there needs to be policies in place. It's moving faster than the policies can keep up.
Well, and Tina, that's unfortunately the inherent nature of any sort of governmental entity, whether we're talking about the feds up in Washington, D.C., state governments like we have here in North Carolina, or even our local school boards that we have across the state. Yes, policies can be put in place, but as rapid as the development is in the AI space, I mean, there's almost no chance that these lawmakers can keep up to date with what's going on.
Yeah, and so that's why, Moms for Liberty, that's the organization that I'm CEO and co-founder of. Our mission is to defend parental rights at all levels of government. So making sure parents are in the driver's seats of raising their children. And so we've written draft policies that people can take to their elected leaders, a pledge that they can take to their elected leaders to sign, that basically say no matter what happens with technology, no matter where it goes, parents need to be in the driver's seat. We need to have access to the algorithms. We need to have access to the entire toolbox. We need to have the keys that hold that access and keep it from our children or give our children access.
And Tina, one of the larger issues I see long term with AI, and let's be perfectly honest with each other, cheating in education has been going on for quite some time. You could always buy papers and buy books that would help you through classes. That's nothing new. But Tina, when we look at the basics of education, reading, writing, and arithmetic, there's got to be some concern that AI is going to make a whole generation completely illiterate when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah, and not just illiterate, but they will have biased education, more biased than some of the teachers right now in classrooms, that they think is factual. And AI hallucinates. It actually lies. It just pulls the information that it has access to on the internet, which isn't necessarily true. And so it's just not kids that are illiterate. We already have that. Only a third of American fourth graders are reading proficiently in America. It's they're going to be deceived on what truth and reality is. And that's even more damaging than not being able to read. And so we have to be sure that children are taught to think critically, that they are taught that AI is a tool to be harnessed, to be used, but they have to be able to discern what is fact and what is fiction and be able to think through and do their own assignments.
Walk us through some of these suggested policies. You mentioned some of these platforms that you have available in this new toolkit. Walk us through some of that.
I'm so excited. So no one has done this yet. Not, and we searched all 50 states. We searched all kinds of nonprofit organizations. No one has put together model policies for school boards or even at the state level that put parents in the driver's seat of the AI in education that's happening in the classroom. And so we have pulled all of that together in one place for parents to access, so you can learn a little bit more about how AI is being used in the classroom, and you can think critically on where you stand on that and what you want to do in that area. And then we have drafted first we drafted a proclamation that you can take to your school board, and we even drafted some school board speeches that you can modify and make your own and go present to your school board and ask them to adopt it. And the proclamation just says we're going to, all AI in our school district, parents are going to understand, we're going to be transparent, we're going to have parents in the driver's seat, and parents are going to be able to they have to opt their children into all of the AI tools that we're using. And then we moved from there to a school board policy, a model policy that you can take to them to adopt. We have a state level model policy you can adopt, and then other tools and resources on the website for you to understand what's going on and track legislation around the country where this is happening.
Tina, you just said something interesting I want to hone in on. You mentioned, making sure parents have the tools to the toolbox, make sure they have the keys available. But unfortunately, so many services are retroactively adding AI. You may have had systems within the school district that have been relevant and working significantly well for years. And the next thing you know, there's a big AI expansion to it. District leaders may not even know something like that is in there.
Yeah, it's definitely what would be a good analogy, chasing like a bullet train, a
Sure.
bullet
Yeah.
train. But it doesn't mean we don't try. It doesn't mean we don't put everything we have into making sure kids are safe, because the things that are coming back that our kids are being exposed to with AI and then corrupting their perception of reality and truth, especially the youngest ages. As adults, we have got to do everything we can to catch that bullet train and harness it.
Obviously, we're talking about AI this morning, but I think we've seen a broader push across the country. And let me state this first. We want our children to be technologically literate. The next generation, in almost any facet of the workforce, you need the ability to use current and modern forms of technology. But Tina, at least here across North Carolina, we've seen the rise of charter schools and other secondary sources of education that are actually taking the technology out of the classroom, getting back to reading physical books, writing on physical pieces of paper. And from all accounts, that seems to be a very effective way, no surprise, to actually educate children.
Yeah, I personally am all for that, and that's a good a good thing to point to for school choice and why parents should have the choice to educate their children how they want, where they want, with what they want. But the truth of the matter is in most classrooms, AI is already there, especially in traditional public schools. And we need to work with our school districts and with our teachers to set policies that make sense. And maybe in some places that means AI tools are not implemented until sixth grade. Maybe it's eighth grade. Maybe it's fifth grade, or maybe it's not till high school. I'm not going to be the arbiter of where that belongs and what needs to happen where, but that's for communities to decide and for parents to decide in those local communities with their school districts.
You mentioned at the top in some conversations with the White House, we've seen President Donald Trump deal with AI. He understands the harnessing that technology and using it to its advantage. Can you walk us through some of the conversations you've had with the federal government as they're dealing with some of these same issues that we're talking about this morning?
Yeah, so it's the first lady implemented, I think last fall, the AI in Education Task Force, and I've been, honored to be able to attend those meetings. And it's the people at those meetings, sometimes it's the head of Google, the head of IBM, and they are excited to be there and to be partnering with the administration. And the administration is excited to be advancing AI. Like I said, the the agenda from them is to advance globally and to be number one. I mean, that should shock no one. President Trump wants to be number one in AI in education. But I'm just so thrilled that they've invited Moms for Liberty to have a seat at the table in these discussions, because that is them recognizing that parents have to be part of this equation, and that they play an important role to making sure kids are safe, and that there's policy that focuses on protecting kids and protecting families. And that's, they've signaled that just by asking us to sign the pledge, inviting us to the meetings, given me time to speak at the meeting to the administration about it. And the response always is yes, yes, of course. They're excited to embrace what we're selling, quote unquote selling.
Now that we've talked about this toolkit, we'll go provide the links to those here in just a second. What's been the reaction? Parental choice and parental involvement in the education system has really increased over the last couple of years. The real emphasis of that started around COVID, when lockdowns and all of the fun things were going on, Tina, in school districts across the United States. Many parents now are hyper involved in their children's education. As you've been pitching this idea around and talking to families across the U.S., what's the reaction been?
Yeah, so we just launched this morning. So, we're going to wait and see what all the reactions are. But, of course, we pre-pitched it a lot of places, and we developed it because there was a request for it. Parents don't know, they don't know where to turn. And we absolutely knew, after talking with the administration and others, that parents needed to be educated on the issue. They don't know what they don't know. And sometimes they'll just put a hard stop on things that maybe their children do need access to because they don't understand how it works. And so if we can get the government and the school districts and such to be transparent, and then we do our part at Moms for Liberty to make sure parents have the tools and the information and the resources, I think we can be number one in the world in education.
You highlighted some of the stuff that you guys have got available, including some sample speeches that folks can give to their school boards, for school boards themselves, some policies and some proclamations that they can sign. Where can folks get those details?
They can go to momsforliberty.org/AI and have access to all of it. There's also a pledge on there. That's easy. You can sign that and say you're going to help protect kids. You can print it out and take it to all your elected officials and have them sign.
It's great information this morning. We appreciate the time. Tina Descovich, the CEO and co-founder of Moms for Liberty, joins us on The Nick Craig Show. Good Friday morning to you. Welcome back to the Nick Craig Show. I want to tell you about the law group here in Wilmington and thank them for their support of the program and remind you that when legal challenges arise, make sure you put your trust in the law group. Since 2003, Melissa Gott and her experienced team have provided high-quality, affordable legal services across the eastern half of our state. Whether you're facing a divorce, navigating a real estate transaction, or maybe you're in a position where you need a strong defense. If so, the law group has your back. Their dedicated team ensures your questions are answered and issues are resolved as quickly as possible. Great news, ladies and gentlemen. They're located in downtown Wilmington, and they're just a phone call away at 910-251-6088, or you can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. Give them a call, 910-251-6088, or visit them online, lawgroupnc.com. The Law Group, experience and dedication you can rely on. We appreciate Melissa Gott and the team over at the Law Group for their continued support of the Nick Craig Show. So kind of tying up this entire conversation, there's a lot of different facets and factors with AI. We talked about some of the concerns as it relates to the utility grid. We just talked with Tina Descovich about some of the concerns as it relates to privacy within the classroom, parental rights, and making sure that parents know exactly what's going on. This is how I kind of want to wrap up the conversation and round out the program here on this Friday. There's kind of two different attitudes as it relates to AI. You've got people, well, maybe three. You've got people that are all in on AI, which is one stance to take. You've got people that are kind of in the middle that say AI is here, AI is coming, it's being implemented in so many more products and services and things that we use day in and day out. And so, we don't really have a choice. We're going to have to embrace it a little bit. And then there's a very large, I don't know how large it is, but there is a substantial group of anti-AI individuals. And I want to speak specifically to folks that might be a little weary on AI, might have some concerns. And don't get me wrong, there are plenty. But I'm going to state this, and you can go back and look at history and at any period of time in history with a major technological advance, which is what I would call the current AI boom. This is a major technological advance. It is here. It's not going anywhere. Now, is there some level of the current AI quote unquote boom that is maybe a little bit more of a bubble than here long term? Yes. And we've seen this throughout plenty of different technological advances in modern history. There are things boom and bust. There's definitely things that will change, things that will go away, things that will not be as prominent. But these, what are called LLMs, these large language models that exist, they are not going anywhere. They are going to stay, and they are going to continue to be implemented. I mean, for example, you can't even do a basic Google search now without an AI summary at the top of the page. And that is something that Google is doing very clearly to try and force more and more individuals into using their AI product. And so you can try and maybe hold off as long as possible. You might be able to put yourself in a position where you don't go all in on AI right off the top. And that's a fine thing to do. The reality is it's here. It's going to continue to evolve, and it's going to continue to be implemented into practically every facet of our lives. I mean, you can hardly do anything now, at least when you're interfacing with technology, where there's not some AI addition. And so the question is, how do you use it, in an effective manner? And going back to the conversation we had with Tina, how do you use it in a way in which there is security and privacy? And that's really the balancing act that I think needs to play out. I really believe that is where the conversation should be. Arguing over whether AI should be here or not, unfortunately, and I'm sorry if you fall into this category, I'm not trying to be ugly about it, but it's a losing argument. You're not going to win this argument. You can, if you want to completely seclude yourself from society and be Mr. or Mrs. Anti-AI, have at it. That's your right to do so. But it's here and it's not going anywhere. So the question is, again, A, how can you use it efficiently and effectively? And B, how do you do that in a way that is looking at and smart as it relates to either your privacy or the privacy of your children, as we were just talking about, as it relates to the education system, whether we're talking about public schools, private schools, charter schools, or even homeschooling. And that is, again, that is really where I see this balancing act right now. It's a couple of interesting comments coming in on the show. Lawyers are revising their whole billable hour policies because they got called out for AI doing the work and not paying employees. We've seen that. We've seen situations where legal representation is getting blasted by judges on completely fictional AI generated briefs or statutes that the AI is just hallucinating and making up, which is a very real concern. I've had situations with that myself where I've been going through lengthy pieces of legislation or lengthy court filings. You upload the document and you ask it a couple of questions, and there's been multiple times where I've been then doing research on something and say, hey, can you show me where this is so I can read some of the context? And the AI model cannot tell me where it pulled that summary from. Why? Because it made it up. Completely what it's called hallucinated on whatever it is that it was generating. So there are, again, those very real risks and those very real concerns. The question is, how do you balance it all? And that's kind of where we are. And I am somebody that when I like to talk about something, I typically like to have some sort of solution or some sort of path or way forward. But I'm going to be honest with you right now, I don't know that I have that, right? Because it's evolving so quickly. I mean, if you go back just 2 years ago, nobody knew what ChatGPT was. I mean, nobody knew. You had tech folks, I was very well aware of it, but the vast majority of the public had absolutely no idea. Now, you ask people if they know what ChatGPT is, most people will say yes. Are most people using it? Well, maybe not, but they're aware of what it is. I mean, you can't go on social media now and not see there was a trend just a couple of weeks ago with people generating an AI caricature of themselves. All of that being generated by ChatGPT or Grok or one of the other main models that people are using. And so it's evolving so rapidly, it's evolving so quickly that, we talked a little bit about this with Tina. It's very hard for lawmakers at all different levels to get ahead of something like that. Because as soon as you write said piece of legislation that does this or does that, the whole technology has changed. The way it's being utilized has changed. And so it's almost a situation where you're trying to follow the bouncing ball and you just can't get ahead of it. It's just constantly bouncing and you're forever permanently just chasing after it and you're never able to catch up to it. And so it is going to be interesting to see from a legislative standpoint, what do state, local, and federal governments do with AI? What do they do with artificial intelligence? Because it is, in fact, a major and will continue to be a major factor in everyday American lives, and not just here in the U.S., but across the entire country. And you do risk a situation where you maybe go too overboard on regulation, where you kind of maybe get a little too antsy with what's going on with AI. And you decide that you're going to, not necessarily fully outlaw, but put so many burdensome restrictions on it that it's no longer practical. It no longer makes sense to use in a variety or a litany of different places because of those overburdensome regulations. To me, that is my main legislative concern, that there is so much chatter, so much conversation, and I will argue probably not as much useful information as could be out there as it relates to AI. I think especially when you look at the federal level, you've got a lot of individuals that have really no idea what they're talking about. And this is with technology in general. They really have no idea what they're talking about as it relates to technology. I don't want those individuals writing legislation as it relates to AI. I don't want those individuals telling me what I can or cannot do with technology when they have not even the most basic understanding of what it is, what it does, and how it operates. And so as we continue to watch this play out, there are those couple of different angles that are all playing a part. You've got the cost on U.S. consumers as it relates to their electricity and utility bills they pay every month. You've got privacy concerns for people across the board, but especially our children, as they're spending so much more time in the classroom planted in front of a computer. That is a major concern there. You, of course, have the economic concerns as it relates to the job market and the positions that used to require full-time people that are now being done by these AI bots and some of this artificial intelligence technology. There's a lot here. And it's going to continue to adapt, and it's going to continue to evolve. And I've always had the mindset, if this thing is going to take on, which it is, figure out how to harness it, figure out how to use it in the most effective way for you. I mean, and that's really all you can do. I use AI very regularly, all the time throughout the day, as I'm trying to figure out how to harness it best for me, for what I do. It does not write my shows. It does not do any of that stuff, but I use it for a lot of research to generate a lot of various pieces of data and information. And so that's kind of the approach that I've taken with it. Love to hear from you, depending on what sector or what business you are in. Is AI starting to creep into what you're doing? I was talking to an individual out at early voting yesterday. She works for a major bank, and they are now beginning the process of rolling out some of the Microsoft AI products into what they're using and doing each and every day. So there's a lot of very interesting implementations and adaptations of artificial intelligence, and it's going to be fascinating to see how this plays out and rolls out in the I was going to say years, but really months to come, and of course that will then translate into years. Quick programming note, we are off on Monday morning. There will be no show here live. We'll be back Tuesday, and we'll kick off another busy week here of the Nick Craig Show. So no, your podcast app and your podcast feed is not broken on Monday. Taking a day off on Monday, so we'll be back with you Tuesday morning right here on the Nick Craig Show. Thanks to the Law Group in Wilmington for their continued support. You can visit them online, lawgroupnc.com, or give them a call, 910-251-6088. The Nick Craig Show streams live weekday mornings, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook. It's also available 24/7 in your favorite podcast app, and her weeknights, 9 to 10 p.m. on WBT Radio in Charlotte. Have a great weekend. We're back with you Tuesday right here on The Nick Craig Show.